Let's dive into the ConVoid settings to gain an understanding of each option and its effects. In this session, we will only focus on the relevant options for adopting and updating openings from linked Revit and IFC models. When starting ConVoid, you can find the settings for the filter you have selected in the toolbox located next to the refresh button. The highlighted options will affect the adoption and updating results of the openings. The other options are used for creating openings based on MEP services, so we will skip explaining these options in this session. Reset approval status of openings when changes occur. By enabling this option, ConVoid will set the approval status of an opening to pending if geometrical changes have been made to the opening. Openings won't be marked as changed if a change in dimensions is less than. You can set a tolerance for minor modifications of the opening dimensions without triggering a status change. The openings will be marked up to date, and the approval status will remain unchanged. Openings won't be marked as changed if a change in location is less than. The same applies here as before. You can set a tolerance for minor modifications of the opening location without triggering a status change. The openings will be marked up to date, and the approval status will remain unchanged. Cut openings with hosts. ConVoid will cut the openings with the host elements by enabling this option. However, it is not recommended to enable this feature. Instead, we suggest using the ConVoid Manager to cut the openings. Please note that this feature will not work with linked elements and IFC elements due to the limitations of Revit. Create a constraint between openings and hosts. ConVoid will create a constraint between the openings and the host elements, such as walls. If you change the thickness or position of the wall, the openings will follow the changes in the wall. Adopt provision for voids openings from linked model. If you adopt openings from a linked model, you must always enable this option. This will ensure that ConVoid will create a link between the linked opening and the adopted openings for approval and coordination. Include host or reference elements not visible in the selected view. By default, ConVoid uses all host and reference elements for its calculations, even if they are hidden. However, you can disable this behavior by selecting a 3D view and deactivating the corresponding checkboxes. This will restrict ConVoid to using only the visible elements in the selected view for creating openings. For example, you can exclude non-bearing elements like dry walls. This feature also works with linked models. To achieve this, follow these steps. Create a separate 3D view that will serve as the reference for the ConVoid process. Hide reference and host elements using filters, categories, or simply hide them manually. Display your entire project without activating the section box. Switch to a view of your choice to start the creation and updating process. Select a filter and go to the settings. Choose the reference 3D view in the drop-down menu. Display your entire project without activating the section box. Switch to a view of your choice to start the creation and updating process. To start the creation and updating process. Select a filter and go to the settings. Choose the reference 3D view in the drop-down menu. Disable one or both options to prevent ConVoid from using hidden elements. Start the creation and updating process. ConVoid will now exclude the hidden elements from the process and will not create openings based on these elements. Keep in mind that any changes made to the reference 3D view will affect the creation and updating process. So when continuing to work on your project, be aware of this potential impact. Include host elements in Demolished phase. By default, this option is disabled. To include hosts in the demolition phase, simply activate it and ConVoid will automatically create openings in the demolished host elements. Ignore openings smaller than. ConVoid will not create openings if the dimensions width, length, height, or diameter of the openings are less than the input value. Set this value to 1 to ensure adopting all openings. Round openings become rectangular if diameter is greater than. By setting a maximum diameter for circular openings, you can control the shapes of round openings using this option. For instance, if you set the limit to 200 mm, all potentially round openings with a diameter greater than 200 mm will be created as rectangular openings instead. You can also change the shape manually after the creation process. Since the aim is not to change the geometry of the openings, set a high value like 9,999 mm. Join openings at a distance of. You can use this option to specify a distance at which multiple openings should be joined into a single one. You can also manually join openings after they are automatically placed. Keep the distance at 0 to avoid joining openings. Ignore openings with an angle greater than. This option allows you to ignore reference elements, such as pipes, that intersect with the host element at a specific angle. Its primary purpose is to prevent the creation of openings in areas where the drilling machine cannot be placed due to a high angle. Create openings with a slope. Enable this option, and ConVoid will create an opening with a slope in X, Y, and Z rotation if the reference elements intersect the host with an angle. If you disable this option, ConVoid will create a straight opening instead. Round up opening dimensions. If you want to avoid odd dimensions, you can use the rounding option to round up the openings to the chosen value. Additionally, you can use the dimension void feature, which will be explained in a later session. Now you're all set to move on to the next step.